in adjusting the annual rate to payers, as well as what the city pays on a contract basis to EDCO, just doesn't work in a favorable fashion for this upcoming year. So if we did that, and we came up with a more favorable recommended increase of about 13.5%. As a further nod to lessen the impact to the city and to our residents, the EDCO has agreed to defer the contract allowed consumers price index adjustment, and that's again one of the components of the standard formula that has been used historically. So they would defer collecting that component of the adjustment and the corresponding dollar amount for the next fiscal year, and delay the implementation of that increase until July 1 of 2026. So doing so would further drop the increase to 11.3% from about 13.5%. When you combine that, those costs, along with other city costs, internal costs that are integrated and used as part of the formula that aren't quite modifying or adjusting that much, it does drop the proposed increase to 10.72%. So again, as you can tell, we're really trying to chip away and work towards a more sensible increase that's more in line with historical adjustments. And along those lines, to further alleviate the impact to residents, the Environmental Management Committee recommends using a portion of our general fund reserves that are maintained specifically for, known as the Refuse Rate Stabilization Fund. So it is a subset of the city's overall general fund reserves. So the balance currently sits at slightly over $1.9 million. The committee proposes that if the city were to absorb that for the first 6 months of the fiscal year, it could lessen the impact to our residents for the first 6 months and really split the ultimate increase into 6-month increments. So there's a step there in between. Doing so would be at a cost of $206,000 that would come from the city's reserves that again is earmarked for the stabilization of refuse rates. Excuse me. So consequently, based on the contractual and internal cost adjustments, staff is recommending an increase, therefore, of $1.52 per month for residential accounts starting July 1st, with the city providing the other half of that increase during that first 6-month period. The second 6-month increase of $1.51 per month would then start on January 1st, 2026. This would ultimately bring the monthly cost of $31.30 per month. It's important to note that the cost is still within the range that our neighboring cities charge, and they are commensurate and corresponding contractors and franchises with the number of cities that neighbor the city of Lakewood. And those who haven't already adjusted their rates inevitably will be doing so in the coming months that correspond with the expiration of their current contracts and franchise agreements. So citywide, we have approximately 23,000 accounts that are subject to the rate adjustments, and if approved this evening, the increase would generate approximately $627,000 in additional fees for the year, much of which would be paid to EDCO as a service provider. So in compliance with state law, the city has notified all affected residents in writing regarding the proposed adjustment of tonight's public hearing. And staff has asked that anybody wishing to protest the proposed increase do so in writing. As of earlier this evening, we received one written protest that was included in the agenda packet. It's important to note that in addition to the public hearing this evening, staff is recommending an amendment to the EDCO contract itself for what we call a rate adjustment based on extraordinary conditions, and that would be the very clause that allows for the adjustment to be made at a lower rate. And so we did not have such a clause included in the original agreement with EDCO. So doing so will allow for staff to review cost adjustments that we did this year that are more beneficial to our residents than those, again, that are allowed in the core agreement. As I mentioned earlier, the council's Environmental Management Committee reviewed both of these items, the contract amendment and the proposed rate adjustment, and the committee recommends that the city council approve this. So again, in closing, staff recommends that the council conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution which enacts the proposed adjustments to residential refuse rates, and that the council approve the contract amendment as presented. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to defer to have some comments from our environmental management.
Thank you. The city comes before the environmental committee twice for long, detailed meetings. Really appreciate the work that staff and ECHO did on this. You know, we've known for a long time the closure of all the sites. And that's one of the reasons why we have a stabilization fund established. It didn't quite come in the way we thought it was coming. You know, things change, but you know, this is going to impact all the communities. We are fortunate that ESCO has existing contracts in Orange County that give them options that some of the other waste carriers probably will not have, and we were able to benefit from that. But we did feel it was appropriate to use some of the rate stabilization fund to kind of soften this blow. So it was the recommendation of the committee for the city council to approve.
Thank you very much. Anything to add?
Yeah, I just I was only for one meeting, so, for the environment meeting. I learned a lot I know there was a lot of numbers going over people's heads, including my own, but I appreciate the time that you put into and the breakdown of everything. Also with the rate stabilization, we would like to, you know, on the committee is not just the, residents, but also the business committee, if you could.
Yeah, so the business, the commercial rates would have a similar offset with the rate stabilization. That item though is part of the budget appropriation. It's a different public notice.
I just want to make it clear that that's a part of it. Well, all of, we respect the businesses and need them also, but it's clearly the residents, we're looking out for all of Lakewood on this one. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the work of the committee. Having said on that, I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's often been said, you know, as residents, we also, you know, are impacted by this. So it's something we all look at. I really like the creativity with the stabilization fund. So thank you for looking at that. Mr. Mayor, I know we have two representatives of EDCO here. I think there's other things. EDCO's have been a long-time partner of the city. I know we have Mark and Marty here, and maybe if it's okay with the mayor, I mean, there's other things that we get bulky item pickup, there's obviously hazardous waste drop-off, and they're working to obviously address scavenging, and I know there was a comment made about the 3-bin pickup, so I don't know if it's appropriate that they could address this for the council to know that there are other things that we get with our regular service that might be important to address as part of their this proposal.
Sounds good. We'll go to Vice Mayor Chase, see if you have any comments first.
Sure. I too also appreciate the hard work of the committee and organizing a way in which our community continues to have reasonable rates. I appreciate all of the work that is done, and we know that there are just some things some increases that cannot be avoided, right? We do not have space in Southern California for our waste. And so this is the best solution that we have currently, and again, very thankful that our committee was able to create a solution that provides an affordable resolution for all of our residents and our businesses.
Thank you. I agree. I was reading through the report and it started out very painfully. And as I was reading paragraph after paragraph, it started getting better and better. And that was because of the hard work of our staff and our committee bringing a reasonable proposal to us. Nobody wants to pay higher trash rates. I don't want to pay higher trash rates. We're all Lakewood residents, right? So we have to pay those rates. We want to keep them as low as possible. And that's something that we've been trying to do since all of us have been on the council and those who came before us. And that's one of the reasons we created the rate stabilization fund, is so we could offset when we had these extraordinary increases. And you know, with all these transfer stations and dump sites and closing down, I mean, it's closing in, and I work near one of these, sites where disposal is dumped, and I just see the lines and lines of trucks, and it seems to be getting longer, every day because there are fewer and fewer places to go, so. Really appreciate the heavy lifting on this, and we do have two representatives from EDCO here. So we have Marty and Mark, if either one of you would like to, or both, would like to come forward and offer any comments on this item.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, residents. My name is Mark Peronian. I'm nothing but a dressed up trash man. But this has been an issue that has really been a hot topic. As Meg mentioned from council, it really came out of left field as far as the landfills closing. We anticipated one or two. There's actually 3 that are closing, and one is on the horizon of closing as well. I don't want to name mention, because if I make mention, someone will say that I predicted that to close, but it's coming. Long story short, we were, the staff, the environmental committee and EDCO worked very diligent, very hard to soften this blow. And we've been doing this in every city that we serve. It hasn't been easy. The reason being is the County of Orange decided to alter and hinder the amount of material that's being imported from LA County. And they have reduced that amount drastically. With that reduction, they've also required us to go to a further landfill. The landfill we were delivering to is Brea Olinda from our transfer station. You know, it's just down the street in Signal Hill, which quite frankly is a blessing to the city of Lakewood because it's so close. We collect your material, we transfer it into larger trucks that carry 21 to 22 tons. And we transfer that all the way to landfills. Again, that's just the trash. That's not the commodities, recyclables, or the organics. That trash now is being taken to Brea. Brea is no longer accepting imported waste via Orange County from LA County. We now have to take it to Bowerman, or soon to come July 1st, they will require the majority of the material to be delivered to a landfill in San Juan Capistrano. So we will be driving a lot further. That takes a lot of organization and operational manpower. A lot of planning has gone into this on the backside on behalf of EDCO. Not to bore anyone here. We have 3 strings we have to pick up. Like the gentleman mentioned, we start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we have one truck that comes by and picks up trash. The next one comes by and maybe picks up recycling. And the same truck that picked up the trash that dumps out at the transfer station will return and pick up the organics. And the organics are usually the last thing that's collected. Sometimes it can vary based on topography and where we're located. Let's talk about organics for a short period of time. Organics are collected through the city and they're taken to our transfer station. We decontaminate, reload the same amount of tonnage. We try to get 21 to 22 tons, and then we have to truck that material out to a facility that will confirm diversion purposes. That facility is in Temecula. So that's a far drive. So these hindrances, so to speak, of disposal capabilities are hitting and impacting the entire region. It's not just this city, and it's not just LA County, it's actually all of Orange County. Just today, Orange County asked us to divert some tonnage that we're currently taking in to Bowerman out to San Juan Capistrano because their landfill at Bowerman is getting too much tonnage. So this is actually a moving target that we literally operationally have to adapt to. So I'm not crying the blues. It's part of our industry. It's part of something that we have to handle, but handling it on an economic basis that reflects not only good service, but commitment of meeting state mandated goals is not easy. But we truly appreciate the opportunity to work with cities such as Lakewood to explain the predicaments that this industry is confronting. As far as our involvement, we do offer quite a bit of services. We have shredding events, as well everybody knows, and they're quite enjoyed by everybody. We have bulky services. We have e-waste pickup. We really try to be community involved and not just recognize as the trash man standing up here spilling a lot of facts. We really want to be community partners. We really continue to strive towards that goal. Any questions?
You know, many years ago, there was some discussion about trash by rail, right? Using rail and transporting out to the desert, out to the inland empire and beyond. And I'm just wondering if those ideas are gonna resurface now that we're seeing this impact on our landfills and our ability to dispose of our waste. I mean, is any conversation about emerging technologies or strategies that, you know, might soften the blow moving forward?
Excellent point. You're always gonna have trash. You can divert, you can recycle, you can really preach sustainability, which we believe in, but you're always gonna have trash. You're always gonna have a little bit of residual. Yes, in the short story, yes. I foresee it. I think you and I will see that day. But what I'm afraid of as a resident, my city isn't subsidizing my rates, so kudos to Lakewood. But as a resident, what I'm concerned about is the cost that will be passed on for rail haul. Using the railroad is not cheap. Transferring it there by the trucks that we can and reloading it can be done, and it can be done fairly economically. But transferring and railing out to the desert is going to be what I think is going to be expensive. But yes, I think we'll see that day.
Well, that's why it's good to be a student of history, right?
Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments from council? Thank you so much for your comments, we appreciate it, we appreciate both of you being here. This is the time and place for a public hearing on this matter. I do have a few folks signed up. Mr. Norris, you're first.
A couple things. One, is, I brought it up earlier with the big ticket items. I was wishing that maybe Southwest could run through the neighborhoods a night before to keep the scavengers out of there. And that would have been $300. I'm sure after other expenses, that's probably, I mean, that's $150, but that would be, what, a lot of months of increased costs that could have been overcome, just for me, may not be everybody. Two, about 5 to 10 years ago, we increased sales tax by 0.5%. And I'm wondering, since that's gone up, 2, almost 3 times, why can't we use that? You know, I know we fixed the administrative offices here 2 or 3 times since I came a long time ago, because you wouldn't cut a tree that had a hole down the middle. Which after you cut it down, I found it was an 8-inch hole down the middle of the tree. But you fix the air conditioning and fix it up 3 times, and now I understand we're doing it again, or maybe this is the 3rd time. And so I think maybe you should think about not making us have everything to be picture perfect, but to use some of our tax dollars to save the citizens money. It's real nice to have to come down here and have good parking and things like that, but, you know, it's also nice to not pay the increased taxes. So maybe that's something to think about. Use our sales tax funds for that. And we can go a long way. Thank you.
All right, thank you, the company representative, giving this amazing, presentation. Thank you. But Mayor Wood, I do have several points that I want to make you aware of. This is another price increase, Mayor Wood. And I remember I have been here before. You remember me, and then until some other politician co-worker kicked me out. That time I was here, I believe it's the water or the sewage price increase. And then right now, Mayor Wood, we are in 2025. For me, I used to, were able to afford a dozen eggs every single week. And then right now, I purchase a dozen eggs once a month. Now, gasoline prices. Before, when I was an illegal immigrant, I can purchase the $3 gasoline pretty easily. And right now, I'm talking about $5 minimum. You know that. Sales taxes. The other person mentioned 0.25. And then I can also tell you, and he predicted something, I can also predict something. Within 3 or 4 years, whatever, there will be another 0.25 sales tax increase. Housing. My housing prices increase, I don't know, I think it's 3.5% every year, I think, whatever. But what I'm saying is that combine all of those together, my literally $17.50 part-time job never increased, unfortunately. It's a little bit difficult to survive. And then, like your friend, politician said, I don't have a car. Your friend said, I don't live in Lakewood. And unfortunately, Mayor Wood, this comment, every single I said, applies to anywhere in the county, anywhere in the state, and anywhere in the country, unfortunately. So I don't know, you can continue to attack me that I don't live in Lakewood, but at the same time, I will continue to advocate affordable living for the residents of Lakewood. You can continue to attack, I don't have a car, but I will continue to advocate for Lakewood residents to have a fair gasoline prices. So I don't understand, if you believe your Lakewood resident does not have any of the issues as mentioned, please kick me out, please arrest me, no problem. But I just want to know, if your Lakewood residents is struggling the same super high ag prices, super high gasoline prices, super high taxes, and super high housing prices or whatever, I really don't know. It seems like every 2 or 3 months I'm here, there's a whatever price increase. And then I will be back in September, June, whatever, and then Mayor Wood, you're gonna have another agenda item, you're gonna have another increase. I already knew it. That's how smart I am. But whatever. Even though I'm not a Lakewood resident, I always support the fair living in any city, all cities.
Councilman Luis.
Just to clarify, this is just for this item only?
This item.
Okay, no, I'll pass. Thank you.
All right, would anybody else like to address the council on this item?
Okay, I'm Mr. Whitehead, and my question would be, it looks like on this website, the relationship with EDCO goes back to at least 2009. So I'm wondering when the last time the city hung out the shingle and solicited bids for other services.
We could have the staff address that with you after the meeting.
Okay. And I'd also like to know when the current contract ends.
We can have our Director of Public Works talk to you about that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, public hearing is now closed on this item. And what's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve the 2025 amendment to the 2009 agreement with EDCO Waste Services LLC and authorize the mayor to sign the amendment in the form approved by the city attorney. And approve the refuse rates as stated in this report.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wood?
Aye.
Councilmember Crop?
Aye.
Councilmember Ariano?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chase?
Aye.
Mayor Hensley?
Aye, thank you very much. We'll move to item 1.2, consideration of budget revisions for fiscal year 2025, 2026. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, members of the public. I want to start off by thanking our staff, led by Director Gomez, first and foremost, for their hard work and really their vigilance in looking out for the fiscal well-being of Lakewood. Tonight, you have before you, for your consideration, modifications to the already approved 2025-26 fiscal year budget. Historically, we've had 2-year budget cycles here in Lakewood, and that allows us to better plan for the future, while still making necessary adjustments along the way. And we're currently approaching the mid-cycle of the 2-year budget that began in 2024 or 25 and encompasses this upcoming year starting July 1st, the 2025-26 fiscal budget. And the council certainly knows this, but to reiterate, the fiscal year for us begins July 1st and ends June 30th. So what's in front of you tonight is the recommended modifications for this upcoming fiscal year. I should say, for the benefit of the audience, the budget process really never ends, and that it's certainly true for the city council as well. And while the work of the past few months has led us here tonight, it is really the formation of the two-year budget that began last year in a very detailed and involved process. The city council just completed a long study session in depth to oversee or to look over these modifications. And that really was the culmination of significant input and involvement from the city council that goes back to January and February when we began with the mid-year budget cycle. So the bigger picture overview that we are presenting tonight is really a summary of that, deeper dive and more detailed review that occurred earlier. Every year the budget cycle has its ups and downs, some steeper than others, and this year is really no different. But it's been the case historically that Lakewood perseveres, and that is certainly a tribute to the leadership of the council, but it's also the resilience and resolve of our community and the local economy, as well as the strong foundation of fiscal management that's has been and remains to be the hallmark of Lakewood. So just set a foundation. We adhere historically and on an ongoing basis to these fundamental budget principles: prudent fiscal management, strong financial oversight, and living within our means. And these certainly are the principles that were passed down to me and continue through the challenges of the past few years. Philosophy has nurtured long-term economic stability and helped guide us through the inevitable bad times that have come and will come in the future. And we've certainly seen our share of those over the past few years. And even though we've come out of the pandemic years strongly and returned to some sense of normality, there are still challenges, but we're in a better place, I think, than most cities to meet and overcome those challenges. And whatever the case is, these recommendations are not contingent on the growing economy as much as we feel they are consistent with our long-standing budget strategies, providing city services at levels consistent with the available resources, generating a surplus each year to be used for capital improvements, and utilizing save and spend capital finance strategy as opposed to debt financing. Again, those are the kind of foundations to our budget management, but certainly we must never forget that really the cornerstone of our budget today and on into the future is Measure L, as mentioned earlier, and our principles and values have guided us through the good times and the bad times, but really the infusion and lifeline of Measure L, without it, our budget would be in a much different situation. For that, we are grateful and mindful and respectful of the responsibility of using those funds as we promised, which is entirely consistent with the proposed revisions that you have before you tonight. A little kind of table setting. I mentioned the ups and downs. We're all aware of some topsy-turviness, if you will. We've always, though, been very conservative here, and that's served us very well. In some ways, that uncertainty that's out there is really palpable, but in reality, a lot of that uncertainty was expected, and was when the current administration took office. Economists generally have a sense in that we will get through this current situation and state of affairs. We go by economists out there. We try to look at a real conservative view that LAEDC, Los Angeles Economic Development Commission, projects what we say is modest GDP growth, but growth nonetheless. If you compare it to last year, it's a little bit lower, where it was 3.4. And though those things obviously impact us, in particular the ports and the employment that surrounds that, manufacturing and logistics, those are definitely industries that are impacted and do have impacts on us. We're also seeing an uptick in interest rates on the heels of kind of the dramatic decreases that we saw over the last previous maybe year to 18 months. And that's put inflationary pressure on purchasers and the economy in general. And lastly, you know, we do operate in an environment that's not short of geopolitical risk. We see that certainly in Ukraine, we see it in the Middle East. But nonetheless, you know, going back to the LAEDC's projections, most economists see this slowdown that we're seeing is continuing on into the next fiscal year, but then settling. And for us, our fiscal position is quite frankly very strong and certainly situates us well as we work through that flattening that's occurring. So that really is kind of an overview. I'd like to hand it over now to Director Gomez to go over more of the details of the budget modifications.
Thanks, Thaddeus. Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm going to go through a bit more of the in-depth numbers here. And I'm going to start out with what we call sources and uses. And as we typically do, we highlight the city's general fund. The city council has the greatest discretion in its use and its allocation. So we are at the halfway point of the adopted two-year budget. And so we have a couple of columns here showing effectively our estimated final budget for the current fiscal year that concludes on June 30th. And you see that accordingly labeled. We anticipate a surplus of about $2.4 million when you take into account the monies that are anticipated to come in when we close the books and those uses. Also, as we look forward and to the next year, we compare and contrast the adopted budget that again the council adopted last summer as part of the two-year budget versus the revised figures. And those are the ones that we've compiled and that include a variety of recommendations that we'll be going through. And those two columns there, you can see we go from about $1.1 million to over $1.5 million in an anticipated surplus. So definitely overall good news, and I'm very pleased to say, as we hear some of our colleagues in other cities, certainly in the county, the city of Los Angeles and statewide, that are going through some very challenging times, I'm very pleased to report that we are as steady and as fortunate to present to you this fiscal outlook. We look forward to seeing its fruition and this form, not a more positive form of it. So once again, the current year, we're looking at about a $2.4 million surplus. And of course, the exact amount will be determined once we go through the independent audit and the auditors sign off on what those amounts are, and we have 12 months of activity. But obviously, the more robust the surpluses allows for more robust reserves, and certainly with that comes the longer-term fiscal security that we've had, and we certainly plan well into the future. Specifically, as we've discussed, Measure L helps preserve city services, fund the city's capital improvement projects, infrastructure overall, and that has certainly made possible the reserves that we've been able to generate. Right now, they sit at $63 million. Historically, it's been 50% of operations, a lower number than that. But it's important to highlight that the current amount of $63 million reflects the strategic growth, and once again, that 20-year plan that we keep on coming back to, that goes back to the adoption of Measure L, and making that these tax proceeds last for a 20-year period. And so certainly that is the goal, and we're staying on track to maintain those, so during leaner times, those same revenues that Measure L generates are used in the future, so we don't burden our residents and the taxpayers. When we look more in depth at the projected revenues, we're looking at a little bit over $80 million in revenues for the next year. We've got a total of 10 slices that we've highlighted. The dollar amounts may shift a little bit, but the proportionality amongst the different slices certainly does not. To further underscore the importance of the Measure L, which is shown here on the lower left-hand side in darker blue, we anticipate receiving about $14.2 million in local sales tax. To the right of that, in the orange color, we have the sales tax, Bradley Burns as it's known, projected to be at $18.2 million. So they obviously are larger portions of the funds that we depend on that fund the city's services and programs. And as we all know, sales taxes very much impacted by consumer attitudes and the overall economic health and consumer spending. So noteworthy revenues that I'd like to highlight for you. The first one is the operations of the Lakewood Equestrian Center. As the council is very much aware, we operated the facilities directly for quite some time, year and a half or so, and without a third-party operator, as had been the case for so many years. So this time last year, when we were operating the LEC, as it's commonly known, we would take in the revenue that would be associated with the day-to-day operations, and primarily boarding fees and the sale of hay and so forth. So now that that is handled by a third-party operator, there's obviously more distance between the facility and city staff. So we are removing, therefore decreasing $976,000 from projected revenues. That's why we say 100% of the decrease. And it's also important to note that there's a commensurate decrease that I'll go through and on the expenditure side of things, as again, this is no longer handled directly by the city staff. Sales tax, once again, I showed you in the previous slide 2 slices corresponding to Bradley Burns and the Measure L local tax. So here we have a couple of decreases on a combined basis. It's a little bit over $550,000, almost 2% decreases each. On a combined basis, we have about $32 million or so that we've taken in sales tax overall. So a very small shift in that has some bigger consequences because of the larger dollar amount. I'll go into more of the sales tax information in the next slide or two. Investment earnings, we expect those to be $950,000 more than originally anticipated. And this is a direct reflection of the federal interest rate and the market as a whole. So a year ago, the environment was such that we anticipated interest rates and the corresponding yields decreasing a little bit faster than they have been. So it's definitely good news on the investment side. Perhaps not so good of news on the borrowing side, but we're not in that position. So very much good news for us overall, and almost $1 million there. Building permits, we anticipate about a $250,000 increase. There's a little bit of a contrast between that and the plan check fees, which anticipate a slight decrease of $44,000. So building permits are associated mostly with ADUs or accessory dwelling units. That's the increase that's anticipated there. Overall, we receive about $2 million per year in building permits. Plan check fees, we typically have the larger projects that register in that area there. Things are slowing down a little bit there, so when we look in the pipeline for those projects, we see a slight decrease there of about $44,000. And last on our list, we have the motor vehicle in lieu fees. This goes back to the early 2000s, where the state, the city previously received directly some of those DMV fees that we pay when we register our vehicles, and they traded those fees because they were going to borrow against them for something that is now known as the in lieu fee. That's more associated and linked directly to property values. So we've been very fortunate that that trade actually has benefited us, and so those have grown at a faster pace than the DMV fees. So when we look at this, and we expect to receive $116,000 more than we anticipated this time last year. And annually, we receive about $12.6 million in these same MPLF and booth fees. As I just mentioned, sales tax again is one of our most important, if not the most important revenues that we receive. This bar chart in front of you shows the trajectory over the last 15 years, inclusive of the upcoming year and what we expect to receive relative to what we've received in the past. So here graphically, you can see the importance of Measure L relative to the traditional Bradley Burns, which has been the historical sales tax that all cities receive. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier as well, we anticipate a slight decrease of about 2% for 2026 in both the Bradley Burns and Measure L categories. However, it's important to note that while we anticipate that slight decrease, it's still an increase over the current year anticipated dollar amount. So it's definitely slowing down. The increase is slowing down at the increase is decreasing, if you will, in that vein. And certainly we hope that that is short-lived and that we can truly have a bit more moderate to reasonable higher increases, obviously well beyond 2026. Excuse me.
Let me just add, I mean, we're talking about sales tax, someone had mentioned before, the increase and the decrease, the ebb and flow of our sales tax, be it Measure L or what we call our Bradley Burn, is not a reflection on increasing the rate, it's just a reflection of the increase and decrease of sales. So our Measure L was instituted, thankfully, appreciate that, as I said, but we haven't increased it. Those other increases that were referenced previously were county increases, and sadly, we don't see that much of that revenue come to us. For Measure L, it's here, it's spent on our infrastructure and our public safety.
So when we now turn over to expenditures, we have about $79.6 million that is spent, appropriated amongst our operations. And so you can see here the corresponding 7 areas or departments where those monies would be allocated. And very much similar to the slide on the revenues earlier in the pie chart there. The numbers may be slightly a little bit different, but it's important to note that the proportionality within the different departments is relatively the same. Our top 3 departments are Public Works, Public Safety, and Recreation Community Services in that order. It's important to note, I mentioned earlier during our study session that adding those 3 together are 75% of the city's expenditures. And we're really fortunate as a contract city and in some communities, primarily those that are full-service cities, 75% of the expenditures are just in public safety services alone. And so here, certainly, while still maintaining a robust public safety department, we're able to be more balanced in other things that bring, obviously, the quality of life to what has been known and expected in the city of Lakewood.
So I'll just go over the personnel adjustments. They're not numerous. Out of these 3, one has a budget implication, and that's the inclusion of 2 maintenance trainees to form a cleanup crew to assist with debris left in the public right-of-way. In particular, this crew would be assigned on the weekends, focusing on the after hour, and it's this type of service that we envision that's really in conjunction with things like the shelter beds that we leased from the Bell Homeless Shelter. That really represents our balanced approach of offering services first, but also making sure that those who don't want services are not impeding the overall quality of life for the community at large. So has the budget implication of $94,000. The other 2 are reclassifications with no budget implications. So we want to add an emergency preparedness manager in lieu of the previous public safety manager who just left us for another city. the focus of that position really has been keenly focused on emergency preparedness, so we want to just kind of make it so in terms of the title. The last one is creation of a technology services manager, and this too would be a reclassification of an existing position in our community development department. In this position, we envision kind of overseeing in a global way all of our technology functions, including our software that manages projects and GIS, but also as we've migrated to an information technology vendor, overseeing that position as a previous position, IT services manager, previously did. That position has been vacated due to a retirement, so this new person would oversee that as well as some of the other information technology stuff.
So next, just like I reviewed some noteworthy revenues earlier, I'll go through some noteworthy expenditure adjustments, and certainly feel free to let me know if you want to pause on any one of them as I go through them. Starting out, our Recreation Community Services Department, I mentioned a bit earlier that the Lakewood Equestrian Center had been turned over to a third-party operator. So the revised budget before you reflects the reduction as a transition away from city operations. And so on the expenditure side, it provides effectively an appropriation savings of $11.2 million. So if you do the math and contrast this with the revenues that were quote lost, it reduces the city subsidy or eliminates it to the tune of almost $250,000. Next, in our community development department, we're looking to make our building services and review more robust. So we are currently out with a request for proposals, and we'll bring forth for the council that award for building official services, and that would be to the tune of $300,000. Next, in our Public Works, Finance, and Administrative Services Department, we're looking to outsource the oversight and management of all the city's security cameras, landlines, and those are telephone lines, that is, and cell phones, and moving them to Infinity, who is our IT contractor that has been doing a fantastic job. And so those functions that we're looking to outsource were originally housed by city staff in our Public Works Department, and that's just a historical decision that's worked well for us. However, as things have evolved and technology has evolved, it makes more sense for them to be really under the IT umbrella. And so doing so and having that same contract to provide that service would require an incremental $200,000 for them to do that. The next item in our Public Works Department is a bit of a placeholder, and as we've experienced, as the council's aware, some needed repairs at both of our pools. And so in anticipation of those, we're setting aside $250,000. Obviously, depending on the scope and the extent of any disrepair, this may provide us with some savings if we don't use it, or this could be a much larger dollar amount. But for now, we're putting in $250,000, bit of a placeholder. Staying within the Public Works Department, we're looking to purchase battery backups at eight different traffic signal locations throughout the city. There is really no concentration. We went back and got those locations, but this is a part of our ongoing effort to install these battery backups. That's just obviously adds another layer of safety when there is an outage, and avoiding as much as possible any dark intersections that we're relying on people stopping out of their own fruition. So you'll see this probably on an ongoing basis going forward, so that we are able to do that. Again, in Public Works, we're looking at allocating some funds to repair and prevent some of the street lining wire theft. As we know, copper has become a popular metal to be stolen, and unfortunately, this is something most cities have to contend with. So on the repair side, obviously, when that happens, we have to tend to that and repair that location or locations. On the preventive side, there are things that Public Works can install to make it more difficult for those looking to steal the wire to not go to that location or make it less desirable. Again, in Public Works, we're looking to do some needed repairs on the Carson Street bridge overpass. In the Finance and Administrative Services Department, we're recommending that the council allocate $1 million in pension pre-funding. We already have $1 million that's budgeted, so this will go a long way in helping us even get to a better position than we already are with some of our long-term obligations. In the Public Safety Department, we are recommending increasing the funding for our Los Angeles Sheriff's Department contract. A year ago, we budgeted 3.5%. And the actual increase that came from the sheriffs was at a 4.5%, so the $181,000 will cover that additional 1%. And then last on the list here, we have, again, in public safety, we put in a placeholder contingency amount for the potential adoption if the city council at a future council meeting would decide to move forward with the flock technology project, or as the council knows, we're in the pilot stage. So if we were to move forward with that, we would have the dollar amount there. If the council chooses not to use it, obviously it would be appropriated or put forth for any other effort as council decides.
Director Goldman, I just,
Sure.
Can I interrupt for a minute? Just for clarification, I asked in closed session, but real quick on the bridge repairs, can we get a clarification on like what our responsibility is? I know we explained, but for the public now that we're in,
Sure.
so if you could, please just elaborate on repairs on bridges and how it is. Thank you.
I'll defer to our Assistant Public Works Director.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Rogers. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Ayala. So your question refers to how the bridges are maintained throughout the city. And Caltrans and the Department of Public Works of the county regularly inspects all of our bridges, each with their own respective area of expertise. Typically, when a local street constitutes part of the bridge, i.e., in this case, Carson Avenue, as it traverses over the river, the deck itself, in other words, the surface in which vehicles drive on, is the responsibility of the city, much like a local road or local street. So therefore, what this allocation being requested for is the Carson Street Bridge is actually technically two physical structures, and there's a gap in between the eastbound versus the westbound. And there is a metal guardrail that's in disrepair. This fee is the County of Public Works will be charging us to repair that metal guardrail, as they and or Caltrans are the only ones qualified to repair such guardrail. And so this fee is for the County of Public Works to repair that guardrail to ensure that vehicles, in this case traveling westbound, do not accidentally, for whatever reason, drive in between the two bridges and find themselves inside the river.
One of the things to note as well is that because it traverses over the riverbed, underneath is really the county flood control's responsibility, and there's often issues down there with debris, and that falls upon the county to deal with. So it's one of those things where they're kind of intersecting. Some of it's the city, some of it's the county, but the bridge itself, as the assistant director indicated, is the city's responsibility.
Thank you very much.
So the next public safety item is for, as the council is aware, the city of Lakewood is one of 3 cities that forms the Station Cities Joint Powers Authority, along with the city of Southflower and the city of Paramount. We're looking to leverage our resources and uniting to move forward on innovative public safety solutions. And the budget, again, before you, includes $50,000 in funding towards this effort. It's a bit of a placeholder on those tasks that will be coming before the Joint Powers Authority. And obviously, with the council's direction and consent. It also includes the carryover of $10,000 from the prior year that was previously allocated. And the third item would be the moving of the current Southwest contract that the city has maintained for a couple of years under the umbrella of the Joint Powers Authority. And that contract is $875,000. So certainly much more to come in the future. Todd Rogers, our mayor, is due to come to that, and so that will still obviously in its infancy in directing projects and then allocations of potential services. One, as I mentioned, the security firm contract with the 875 is supposed to be under the Joint Powers Authority, and that will be inclusive of carrying forward the current level of service for the full year. As you might recall, back in February, there was some additional coverage that the council authorized, and so a full year of that service is $307,000, which is already included in the 875. In public safety as well, we have a full year of 2 contract homeless liaisons that again will supplement our efforts to address this important issue. This is first approved by the council in February of this year, and this would assure funding for the entire fiscal year that's upcoming. Along the kind of homeless conversation in public safety, we have a new Ford F-250 truck that would be assigned to a new cleanup crew that our city manager discussed earlier. That was authorized earlier in a meeting or two ago as part of other vehicles that were purchased and expedited. And so we've incorporated that amount into the current year, the 24-25 budget. And last on the list, we have the annual capital improvement project set-aside amount. The CIPs, as they're commonly known, are not part of this operating budget that we present, but rather we have a single dollar amount that is typically been incorporated. And initially, when this amount was set aside, it was at $3 million. It was brought up to $3.5 million last year. And as we well know, inflation and the cost of goods and services has really increased. So we recommend adding a bit of a CPI, Consumers Price Index escalator of 3%, which would add $105,000 to the $3.5 million, so to bring that up to a little bit over $3.6 million. Turning over to our water enterprise and utility fund, similar to the summary of our general fund earlier, when we look at it, we have our final estimate for the current year as well as the adopted versus revised 25-26 budget. We're anticipating a bit of a deficit for the current year. It's $175,000. We had some revenues that we had anticipated that as part of our sale of water and interconnect with the city of Long Beach that they opted not to receive as they had other workings going on. Otherwise, we would have had a surplus there. So we certainly don't like to see a deficit at all. But that said, this is a fairly small one, and the water fund also has, an appropriate amount of funding that can certainly bear that deficit. And then for the next year, we certainly anticipated slightly better than anticipated in the adopted budget surplus, with the new number being $174,000. And similar to the general fund earlier, for the next year, we expect an increased amount of investment earnings with higher investment yields and a slightly higher increase in the water software upgrade. So we have a program that's fairly outdated right now that we look forward access information and increase the ease of use. So really, in closing our presentation, overall, as I started the presentation, we continue to do well as a city. I'm very pleased to say, as we've been able to maintain the city program services and capital improvement projects that we set out to accomplish, even not but beyond and before the start of the fiscal year, but back to the Measure L implementation days, and we're pleased to say that we continue on that road where we have surpluses as anticipated, and not only on a very short-term basis, but really as part of this long-term stabilization strategy that we've discussed in the past, and again, underscoring the importance of that long-term perspective, that we look at that so that we are able to weather any storms or any unforeseen funding events that the city may face. So the recommended action for the council is to conduct the public hearing as presented earlier and adopt the revised budget for fiscal year 25-26 with all the various accompanying resolutions and agreements that are in your agenda packet. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive presentation, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Director. We did have an hour-and-a-half study session on the same item prior to the council meeting, but it's great. We want to make sure that we have full transparency to our community, and it's always good to hear this information as often as possible so we have full grasp of it. So with that, any questions or initial comments? Well, we'll say questions. We'll go to deliberations after the public hearing. Any questions? Questions?
To reiterate, we had a fairly robust discussion, and I applaud you for your diligence and oversight. Really good questions, and I don't want anybody to think that you guys didn't kick the tires on this.
They've been kicked. That was quite the volume they gave us as well. Yes.
Just for clarity, I want, and since we're going into public hearing, I want to make it clear that Mayor Todd Rogers is the mayor. I'm a council member.
Thank you. I appreciate it. At least for one mayor at a time. Right? Mr. City Manager, or Mr. City Attorney, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I want to talk about the way the item is set up on the agenda and why it's set up this manner, and make comments about one of the sub-items. So, as you know, this is a large item with a whole bunch of subcategories to it. And as is our custom, it's designed for the council to conduct a single public hearing and take a single action on this entire item. At the early portion, there are a few resolutions that I want to talk about. Resolution C, which is 2025-23, that amends the budget for the first year of the previous cycle. It's just coming to close later this month. And that can come at that point preceding the next item because it deals with this particular fiscal year. But before you can take action on the items that affect next year's portion of the budget, you have resolution 2025-24, which is item D, which is the item where annually the council has to establish what's called the GAN limitation for the city and make a determination that the amount that's being expended does not exceed the maximum amount that is allowed under the GAN law, which went into effect in the late 1980s, late 1970s, yeah. And every year, Mr. Gomez and his staff do a complicated computation as to what the current amount is based on a whole bunch of statutory factors, and they create this wonderful memo that comes out as the city attorney's memo, despite the fact they do the legwork on it. And what I do want to point out is that this year's GAN limit is over $79 million,
and the amount that the city is expending that is subject to that limit is about $60 million. So the city is well below the maximum amount allowed under the GAN limitation. So that comes next, and then what follows is the changes to the budget for the following year, and then all of the agreements, other resolutions, et cetera, to follow. So it's set up in sequence for a reason, but a single action will suffice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Any final comments, Mr. City Manager?
Just want to thank, again, the council for their diligence and oversight, as well as our finance staff and all of our staff for their participation. Very humbled with the responsibility, but also proud to continue on the legacy of prudent fiscal management for the city.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So this is a time and place for a public hearing on this matter. Mr. Norris, I believe you're signed up for this item.
This was very hard to read because the whole document for here wasn't put through an OCR, optical character reader, so it was hard to search for words and such. It made it very difficult. First, I was looking at the administrative costs. I noticed that it looks like it's for the two administrative departments, finance and admin, it's about 14.3%. I was looked at a close city, smaller city, which shouldn't be as efficient, Bellflower, they're at 9%. So you may want to put a sharp pencil to your calculations on what's needed to see if maybe we need to make changes. Two, on 39, I noticed there was a change in landscaping agreement for medians. I know my local median, I saw it done by city people, not by a contractor. 41, I think we're paying about $250,000 for Long Beach bus system. And I was wondering, a couple of years ago, I think it's the 101 stopped doing service within Lakewood, which went up Las Cruces Diagonal and then Harvey and such. I was wondering, was that ever taken out of the calculation? Third, item 62, the street banner. I know in the south section of the city, we hardly get any street banners. I see it in the north section, I see it in the east section, I see it in the west section, but in the south central Lakewood, I don't see anything. I don't even see a sign that says Lakewood on where we have a big median, like on Las Cruces Diagonal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Appreciate it. Sally Tanaka.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff, for the comprehensive presentation. Thank you for your transparency that you had a study session of 1 hour and a half, and then you had a 30 minutes public information hearing, and then I was wondering where is the transparency for the other 1 hour that was not represented to the public. Thank you very much. Again, Sheriff, I'm talking about specifically the budget item about the Sheriff Department. Maybe you don't really know me, but I have been involved with Black Lives Matter a lot lately since the 2020. And I want to provide several data points for you so you can research. In the year of 2024, the Sheriff Department provided $230 million. Why it is $230 million? Liability payout. Now, Sheriff, when you are trying to contract with a law enforcement agency, I want to ask you, is that a good idea that you are contracting with the department who paying $200 million to settle a civil lawsuit, wrongful arrest, illegal use of force, illegal search and seizure, or whatever law enforcement misconduct? Now, if you have that additional $200 million, tell me what more you can do about that. Second of all, Sheriff, I want to talk about that. Are you aware certain names? Banditos, executioners, Vikings, 3,000 boys, 2,000 boys, Indians, the Red Devils, the Rattlesnakes. Are you aware of any of those certain names? Give me a law enforcement agency, any law enforcement agency in the United States, NYPD, whatever, California Highway Patrol, who has more than 37 deputy gangs. Give me one example, Sheriff. Now, continue that talking about Black Lives Matter. This is something I learned in our social justice class. In the Sheriff Department, every single week, on average, Sheriff Department is being sued by at least one black plaintiff in the civil court. Tell me, giving me any other law enforcement agency who is being sued by at least one black person that every single week, every single year, day after day. So I just want to ask our sheriff that when you are trying to contract with the law enforcement services, law enforcement agency, you want to provide public safety, we all agree with that. We all want safety. Tell me that how is that a good idea that in Los Angeles County we have 15% black population. Every single year, Sheriff Department arrests more than 52% black residents. Tell me, does that number make sense to you? I will always advocate Black Lives Matter. I will always advocate Hispanic Lives Matter, no matter how many times you kick me out.
Thank you for your comments. Carson, Luis?
Yes. I just want to bring this body's attention to some of the housing and homelessness items. If you're not aware, there's a massive federal case right now against the whole of LA County on the management, or rather I should say the mismanagement of funds regarding housing and homelessness programs, Lakewood included. There was testimony by the county auditor, the special master, and various other individuals from across different cities, LA, Lakewood, and so on. And what they were talking about is different costing and values regarding what a day rate is for a bed, what is a bed, what is a standard price for a unit, what is a unit, and the price variations across cities and counties. Some of the most fascinating testimony, because I actually got to sit trial and it's related to these motions and sub-motions here, are very specific. I see here on 60, for example, we see a day rate cost of $89. Well, we all know at the very least downtown LA is far more expensive than Lakewood. So why is it that in Lakewood then I see the same cost for a day rate that is seen over in downtown LA? Why is it that still in many of these attachments there's no clarification to this day what constitutes as a bed? Can you double, triple, quadruple count what might be an existing bed as long as you create a new program? And therefore you can now have some leeway to call it a new bed. We're talking about not just in Lakewood, but LA County, the misappropriation of close to trillions of dollars, because it's not just about the bed. I have many friends that are homeless. They're not getting the services they need, even though many of these programs, including in Lakewood, allege to actually be helping these same folks. Why is that? Well, some of the testimony in this suit against the county are as such. There's no due diligence being provided by any of these alleged vendors to do a thorough intake on what caused that individual, not just at the personal level, but at the systemic level, right? Which includes this body and other government bodies, to actually understand what systemic issues failed them to cause them to get to that point to be homeless. Whether if they're a veteran, why haven't their bills for medical needs been paid off? Why haven't their family members received the social services? We're talking about literally the largest fraud scheme ever known to the history of man, and it's happening here in LA County. And it scares me to see that the same cost that I saw at testimony for a day rate in Lakewood be $89, when it's the same money that I saw be used for downtown LA.
Yeah, please. So, I certainly think it's appropriate to scrutinize the use of the homeless funds that come from the state and the county, so I agree with that. Notably, though, the city doesn't receive any of those funds, and we are certainly not part of any lawsuit. the homeless shelter that's being referenced is the Bell Shelter. It's run by the Salvation Army, and we lease beds, and certainly, you know, we would just be very pleased to spend less, but, you know, given the crisis at hand, it is the nearest shelter for us, and that's why we utilize it, but we have no influence on the cost of the shelters. Again, to reiterate, we don't get any of the Measure H, now Measure A money.
Yeah, I certainly have a lot of questions for the county as well. With the day rate that's listed is the actual rate that we pay. That's why it's listed. It's not compared to any county or any other city. It's not involved in any lawsuit. It's what we get charged and what we pay. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment about success stories. I sit on a number of, what they call homeless committees and they call homeless liaison committee. Our city does its part. We have a homeless liaison that's very passionate, out every day making contact with homeless individuals to see if they want to get resources, letting know what's going on in the community. We tell them, hey, if you want to get resources, you can go right now. It is their choice where they turn down what we give them. And as I sit on the other committees, we have a number of success stories of people getting back on their feet, getting jobs, finding their own housing. Some other people need more medical attention, others need, you know, to go see a therapist. But I just know that we're doing all we can here, and this is only a small part of everything Lakewood's doing. So just make sure when you come up here and say something, it's good to know that when you're talking about the city, when you come here, try to do all the research on what we're doing here, please. Thank you.
All right, anybody else like to address the council on this item before I close public hearing? All right, public hearing is now closed. Let's go to council deliberation. So much to digest and so much to say, right? We're gonna start with our vice mayor. He seems ready.
I'm not ready, but I am, and I will.
Always ready.
I am. No. But I will keep my comments fairly short. You know, thank you again to our city staff and my council colleagues around the work on ensuring that we continue to maintain a budget that is reflective of our values and a budget that allows us to continue to provide the quality services that we do. I also appreciate that we continue to plan for the future, not knowing what might lie ahead of us. We have a robust amount of reserves that will allow for any adaptation that might need to happen as we move forward. So I am appreciative of the work, and I know as our city manager has shared that there are not many other cities who are in this position that we are, which is a healthy one where we can continue to do the good work with a sound budget.
Thank you so much. Great.
Just want to say thank you to the staff for all their hard work. I know they put countless amount of hours in to bring us a big stack of a booklet. But I definitely want to know that, let everybody know that we do have, you know, we can only meet one council member at a time with our city manager, and we go over, you know, line by line with certain budgets and get things going on. And I appreciate the hard work going from staff to what we do on the council and going further. And also, you know, we get audited, you know, we audit ourselves. And I believe there's an award that we continue to get every year. What is it, Senator?
GOFA, what's the name of the GOFOA is?
The Government and Finance Officers Association, so it's GFOA.
Yeah, thank you. And I understand that there's always room for improvement and we're all looking for ways. People can always be critical, and I understand that, and I appreciate their taking the time to give us the great advice. But know that we're working our hardest. I know our staff is working, and we're not up here just twiddling our thumbs. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Go to Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to city manager and directors and all of our staff. As the city manager said, the budget cycle is pretty much throughout the year. Probably after this is approved, we start working on the next one. I think one of the things we do as a council member, one of the most important things is the adoption of a budget. It's money that we receive, and it's money that we spend. And as we've talked about with rates and fees and taxes, those of us that sit up here as council members, we pay the same fees. It's our money too, it's your money. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that we've asked a lot of questions, and just for clarity, the hour-and-a-half study session that the mayor mentioned is a public meeting. It is publicly noticed. It is not done in the secret of anything. It's a public meeting that just allows us to ask a lot of questions in a study session format. But I want to acknowledge the fact that we always keep those guiding principles that got us here. What was it, 5 years ago, this budget looked a lot different. I mean, we were going into a structural deficit that was scary. It was scary for the things that we can provide to our residents. And I think everything we do in this city, from public safety to recreation to public works, is a testament to those council members before us, hopefully those that are here today and those that will follow, that we will always spend within our means and that we will always put the best interests of our residents forward. And we do watch every dime, and we ask a lot of questions. So to our directors and to your staff and to our residents, thank you for being part of this process, and thank you to my colleagues for bringing up things that make us think about the things that we're spending on. So glad to be a part of this, glad to support an almost $80 million budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to thank staff for the time you put into this and the time you spend briefing us and answering questions as we go through this. All 77 items, and even the more detailed pages that we get in the detailed budget that we go through. So I appreciate the fact that we are, we work very hard and have the philosophy in the city of being prudent with the money, being conservative in our estimates, both for our expenses and our revenues, that we're not betting the farm on a great year and then it doesn't happen and we have to pull back, while being able to maintain the quality of life that our residents expect in our city, and to be able to do things like our public safety items where we add to address the current situation. But there's always unknowns, and Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Chase and I sit on the Capital Improvement Fund, CIP committee. We have 20 years worth of deferred maintenance. We have 2 projects on our senior center and one of our parks, very old facilities that we have been working on for years. We're trying to get that last bit of funding put together, but those projects are hit by inflation and resources scarcity. So we have to make sure that, like we said, we don't overcommit ourselves, but we're trying to make sustained progress in getting these things taken care of. And I think this budget addresses that. We hope for better times, but we're prepared for worse. And it's a budget that if things do happen, we're able to adjust. And I really appreciate that. And all the work that my colleagues have put in on this, we all bring different backgrounds and expertise, and the questions are pretty thorough, and I think it fleshes out issues that we need to discuss and prioritize as a council for our community. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for your comments. They were very well placed. And I just want to ask the city attorney real quick, am I able to be mayor and sheriff at the same time? Is that okay? I guess I'll have to decide which one. So, yeah, we have many core values here in the city of Lakewood. We're going to be the first contract city, that's one. We've always been fiscally prudent. The councils that came before us did an amazing job in terms of balancing the budget. We have a pay-as-you-go philosophy. We don't mortgage the future, pay for things now. We save the money and then we invest it. And we're known for several things. All of us serve on regional organizations, right? And everybody looks to the Lakewood plan, right, as the foundational principles for creating a city nationwide. They teach it in public administration courses. I think we have about 170 full-time employees. Is that about right?
Yeah.
And we have a few hundred part-timers, seasonal employees, and the rest we have contract partners. And we have trash partners, we have street sweeping partners, we have County of Los Angeles is a big partner with us, including the Sheriff's Department. City of Lakewood is not perfect, but we all interact with other levels of government and other governmental entities, and I'll tell you, I think we compare pretty well. And I get calls all the time, I'm sure we all do, I know we all do, from neighboring cities saying, hey, what's going on with Clark Avenue? Why don't you repave the street? And we find out it's in a different, the segment they're talking about is in a different city, right? Our portion of Clark Avenue is pretty good. Lakewood has been known, notwithstanding an earlier comment we made, which I'm very concerned about, and I'm gonna find out where that is, but the smoothest streets around, you can tell when you drive into Lakewood. You can tell by the streets, you can tell by the trees, you can tell by the parks, you can tell by the neighborhoods and the neighborhood aesthetic and the way the city's maintained. You can tell by the legendary customer service that people receive at Lakewood City Hall when they call, or when they use the Lakewood Connect app, or when they walk into City Hall. We're not perfect, and we address those issues when they come up, but we're pretty darn good. I called a law enforcement agency today, not the LA County Sheriff's Department, a very well-known law enforcement agency between normal business hours, and I got a recording. And I didn't even get an opportunity to leave a message, all right? I got a recording. Now, it could have been a very important thing. Yes, I could have dialed 911, but I did have an urgent issue. And I'm in the law enforcement profession. So I had to figure out a way to backdoor and make the contacts that I needed. That's not gonna happen in the city of Lakewood. We take service requests, you call in, you ask for the service request desk, we'll take it over the phone, we'll ask those questions, we'll do those things. Having a balanced budget, having transparency is a core value in this city. We do not mismanage our funds. We get audited, as Councilmember Ariano mentioned, every single year. And one of the questionnaires that we always get every year is, has anything been brought to your attention that's irregular or improper on the part of staff or any of your colleagues? And I've been on this council for 24 years, and the answer has always been an emphatic no. Never had a concern, never had a concern. And to have people come in and say, well, yeah, this lawsuit and the misappropriation of homeless funds, including the city of Lakewood, that's not true, right? Or we have other comments made about not being granted a city permit by non-Lakewood residents. Well, that's not true, right? And this is the most accessible council I've ever served with, ever. If there are questions, all you gotta do is contact any one of us on Facebook, Instagram, telephone, email. Brett, did I leave one out? TikTok? I'm not on TikTok. You can't get me on TikTok, I'll confess that. On what? The pigeon? Yeah, send a raven. Who watches Game of Thrones, right? Send a raven, we'll respond to that. City Hall's the same thing, and our website has improved dramatically over the years in terms of transparency, and the ability to access legal documents, attend public meetings. I can do any of those things, but this is a very sound budget. This is the result of a lot of work by our staff, and I have some great partners on the city council that take their responsibilities extremely seriously to safeguard the public funds and to maintain the public trust. And one of the things we found out during Measure L 5 years ago is despite none of us being really enthusiastic about passing a additional tax, our residents trusted us, the city council, at a rate of over 60%, to say, you know what, we're gonna tax ourselves to get us out of the structural deficit. And the last point I'm gonna make is we talk about Measure L as a generational tax. The reason we do that is we made a commitment that we're not gonna ask you for another tax for at least 20 years. So every budget year, every budget cycle, we put money aside into a fund that will offset future structural deficits. After about 10 years, we projected that we're gonna start kind of inching toward that structural deficit problem again, just because of the way the economy cycles and works and our partnership with the state of California and other challenges. But we're gonna have money set aside so we can offset those deficits with money that we've saved, so we don't have to pass that burden along to our taxpayers. I think that's a pretty big deal, and I'm pretty proud of our staff and our council for having that level of commitment. There are a lot of great cities around, they do a great job, good for Bellflower, I'm glad they're 9%. And they're our partners on the Joint Powers Authority and partners with us, just like all the other surrounding cities. But they're different, Lakewood's different, and I'm really proud of what we do, and a lot of people come to us for advice on how we do everything from budgeting to contracting to managing RVs on our streets to paving, and a lot of cities could learn a lot from us about that. So thank you all so much for that. Thank you to my colleagues for the amazing work that you do. I'm really proud to serve with this entire team. So with that, unless there are takebacks, any more comments?
No, I was gonna acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, your comments, they were well stated, and I appreciate you wrapping those all up around our comments on the budget and the great work our city does. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the revised fiscal year 2025-26 budget with all the accompanying resolutions and agreements. Is that, Mr.
Satisfactory?
Do you want to?
You want 1 through 77?
Yeah, that doesn't take into account the dam limitation.
Yeah, let me
I think
read.
it's the entirety
Yeah.
of all of the recommendations on the entirety of item 1.2 and all of the stuff.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll start again. Great comments, Mr. Mayor, thank you for wrapping up. I will move approval of item 1.2, A, B, C, D, E, and 1 through 77. Did I get it, Mr.?
You got it.
Thank you, very good.
Second that? We have a motion. That was one you looked good after there. We have a motion and a second? That's right. All right, any further discussion? All right, good. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wood?
Aye.
Councilmember Cross?
Aye.
Councilmember Ariano?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chase?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye. Got through that one, right? Good job. We have a budget. All right, item 1.3, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, fiscal year 2025 through 2029, 5-year consolidated plan, fiscal year 2025-2026, 1-year action plan, and analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Director Cervantes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council. This item pertains to a community development block grant program and the required consolidation plan for fiscal year 2025 through 2029. The consolidation plan submittal process is required by HUD, or Department of Housing and Urban Development, to receive CDBG funds. The current plan outlines a 5-year strategic plan for the period of July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2029. The plan shown on page 2 of the report, or staff report, is outlined and funded in a manner that addresses the housing and community development needs for low and moderate income residents. The plan also addresses the city's fair housing program for the next fiscal year. Public participation program began on January 27th, 2025. The public comment period as it relates to the public hearing process commenced on March 17, 2025, with a published notice as well as a posting of the notice, and the public hearing will conclude after tonight's City Council motion to adopt the program. And so with that said, staff recommends the City Council conduct a public hearing for citizen input for the proposed fiscal year 2025 through 2029 consolidation plan, fiscal year 2025-2026 action plan, and the analysis of impediment to fair housing choice, and following the public hearing, approve the fiscal year 2025 through 2029 consolidation plan, fiscal year 2025 through 2026 action plan, and the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and authorize the city manager to direct staff to submit to HUD the approval plans as required by the CDBG certification. And that concludes the presentation. Open for questions.
Very good. Thank you very much for the report. Any questions? Seeing none, this is time and place for a public hearing on this matter. We do have some people signed up, I think. Mr. Norris, are you signed up on this one?
No, you want me to?
No, well. Did I say no out loud? I would love you to, but if you have nothing to say, that's fine. All right. I think that was my inside voice that came out. All right, Sally Tanaka, you're up.
All right, fair housing choice. Thank you, Governor. Fair housing choice that I think that in the Los Angeles County, I think in the city of Lakewood, and I believe that whatever is the city manager, whatever is the city attorney, whatever, everybody have different fancy titles that you said you are not part of the LA plan, and you said you have amazing homeless outreach services, and then, well, the thing is that I have a different opinion on that, because I believe that we are having a housing crisis is because you failed to have whatever or outreach services, you failed to have fair housing choices, and then most important, when we're talking about housing, there's one topic that is unavoidable: mortgage, interest rates, and then et cetera, et cetera. And then tell me, and then I think the governor just mentioned you have 270 full-time employee, you have several hundred of part-time employee. Okay, let's do an easy count. That how many of your 270 employee full-time? Tell me how many of them can afford a house in city of Lakewood? I think that's very easy to verify. That's very easy to research. And then at the same time, how many of your 270 employees are benefiting from these fair housing choices? How many of your 270 employees are actually buying a house in the Lakewood, are actually living in Lakewood? It's very easy to verify. And then I believe the governor challenged that. He said, you know, what I said is not true, it's not true. Correct me right here, correct me right now. We can have a public debate. Second of all, about fair housing choices, and the governor also mentioned that you have several hundred of part-time employees. Now, again, same question, same reasonable doubt, same probable cause, same reasonable suspicion. How many of your part-time employees can come here, tell me, actually tell the whole world, yes, because we have amazing homeless outreach team, because we have amazing fair housing choices, yes, I work part-time at Lakewood. Yes, I can buy a house in Lakewood. Yes, I can afford a house in Lakewood. Yes. Who can say that? It's very easy to verify. I challenge the governor, and then hopefully our governor accept the challenges. Again, I will continue to have my reasonable doubt in the fair housing, because what I witnessed in the Los Angeles County is that they're saying, okay, we are so amazing. We have these hearings, the Board of Supervisors, okay, we are doing so good. They have beautiful speech, even better than our governor's speech. And then what happened? Billions fraud, currently under Judge Carter. And then same of Los Angeles City. And then, okay, the council member Hernandez, council member Harris Dawson, council member Jurado, okay, we are so amazing. What's the reason? Right now, everybody Homeland Services collapsed. So I still have reasonable doubt. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. I hope you're speaking one more time. I want one more promotion if that's possible. Right. Carson Luis, come on.
So the problem I have with some of this choice wording is anytime something comes across the desk of fair housing choice, nobody wants to choose on whether first of all, they have reasonably priced housing, not just fair market, but to be able to actually afford it within the reasonable and prevailing wages in the area that do not require some obscene level of accreditation to achieve that goal. And to what term are we talking about that it's fair and affordable, right? These are very deliberate terms that often obfuscate the issue at hand. Well, what are those issues? Well, let me count the ways. Number one, the lack of scorecard metrics to detail exactly what constitutes a success upon exit of any of these programs, because they're not meant to be permanent. So what does that mean? Does that person leave exiting back to homelessness? Or do they become homeless for a year or two and then get back onto a shelter only to then fall back into homelessness? Are they any closer to actually achieving the goal of being a homeowner? Even if they obtain a mortgage, how likely are they afterwards to fail on that mortgage for a wide variety of systemic issues that are not their personal fault, right? And this was, in fact, given testimony by various county level officials on the stand presiding with Judge Carter, where it was very clear, very, very exceptionally clear, that there is no choice. And anybody given the choice to have a roof over their head would obviously choose to have the roof over their head. But in what environment and what circumstances is that roof being provided? Well, I'll tell you, prevailingly all across the county, you have shelters that are packing in people like sardines, people with special needs that are not having those needs being met at all, and it is known by all staffers at every level, and the county auditors, the special master, and a wide plethora of other officials have stated publicly on the public record that yes, there is no due diligence being done, that yes, we are failing people at a systemic level, and that yes, while we recognize that there are personal issues, obviously people succumb to addiction, obviously those are a factor. But by and large, the biggest weight that resulted in people becoming prevailingly homeless time and time again is the systemic failures at the county level. At the county level, it's the systemic failures. The Pareto rule, 80% of the reasons were systemic failures that caused them to be homeless. So we're not actually serving the population. We're putting together PR that says so. We're putting together nonprofits to help launder that money, but it's prevailingly not the case that's successful.
Thank you for your comments. Would anybody else like to address the council?